Welcome to the Disrupt podcast. I'm your host, Haley Davidson, and I'm a freelance content strategist and the founder of the Gaia Content Agency. Freelancing changed my life 2 years ago, taking me from underpaid and undervalued in the corporate world to earning more than I ever have and feeling totally fulfilled and excited about my work every single day. On this show, my goal is to help you achieve the exact same thing. Stay tuned for practical advice, mindset tips, and much more. Hello, and welcome back to the Disrupt podcast. This is episode 4, and today we are talking all about imposter syndrome. So recently I did this live event webinar all about freelancing 101, and it was amazing to see how many people had questions about just getting started with freelancing and also pricing. And I think when it comes to freelancing, a lot of people do have questions about the practical aspect. And that's super important, right? How to get clients, how to generate leads, how to market yourself. But often what keeps people stuck from a certain revenue level or from getting started in the first place is actually mindset, and it's actually imposter syndrome. And sometimes it's hard to even see that in yourself. But once you recognize it, you can start to take steps forward. Before we dive into the 6 steps you can take to overcome imposter syndrome as a freelancer, let's talk about what imposter syndrome even is. So according to the internet, the definition of imposter syndrome is the condition of feeling anxious and not experiencing success internally, despite being high-performing in external objective ways. So practically, for me, this happens all the time, and I talk to my therapist about it a lot because she actually has been really helpful when I'm talking down about myself to remind me of how far I've come. So you might have imposter syndrome if you very rarely celebrate your successes, or if when you try to talk about your experience, it's a struggle, or if the idea of putting yourself out there as a freelancer brings up a lot of anxiety. Or maybe, like a lot of people that I've talked to and a lot of freelancers I've coached, you think that you don't have enough experience to even get started with freelancing. Anytime you think about getting started with the first step that I always say, which is like emailing 30 people that you know and saying that you're a freelancer, you think of all these caveats you have to give, like admitting that you're not that experienced before they find it out themselves, right? Or basically just downplaying yourself or thinking that you'll never be able to charge certain prices. I think the biggest number one way though that this comes up is really with people believing that they are not experienced enough. So let's just go ahead and dive into the 6 steps that I've taken and that you can take to finally overcome imposter syndrome and actually get started with your freelance business and start charging the prices that you need to in order to be successful and earn a living wage, right? And beyond a living wage. Step number 1 of overcoming imposter syndrome is acceptance. Accepting that this is how you feel right now in the present moment, and that you can do your best to change it, but that at certain moments and points in your life, it's just going to exist. I can tell you that even after a full year of freelancing, even after closing some really big deals, even after having my highest months ever, I still get down on myself and I still get imposter syndrome. But the simple truth is that you cannot think your way out of imposter syndrome. You can use tools to manage your emotions, right? You can create a list of all the reasons that you are worthy of that price or that you are capable. You can keep a folder of positive feedback from clients, which I know some people do, and is like a really cool way to battle your imposter syndrome. But at the end of the day, accepting the imposter syndrome is so crucial because you have to learn how to move forward in spite of it and not wait for it to go away in order for you to take action. And that kind of brings me to step number 2, which is having a compelling vision for why you're doing what you're doing in the first place. So a great story around this is back when I was still working in my 9-to-5, I knew for years that I wanted to freelance. I mean, even when I was in college, I had no desire really to go in the corporate world, but I felt like such an imposter. Like, how could I ever think that I'm able to actually help clients and be a freelancer in this way. Even up until the day that I actually quit my job and went full-time as a freelancer, I was not ready. And honestly, I felt like such an imposter when I put myself out there for the first time. But I had a really, really compelling reason why I wanted to go out there and do this. And it was to show people what's possible and to show people that you don't have to stay in a toxic workplace. You can create the life you want with freelancing. Now, the flip side of this is that if you don't create a compelling vision and a compelling why for why you're going to overcome your imposter syndrome, is that the universe might just give you enough pain that you can finally overcome it. And to be honest, that's kind of what happened with me. Like I said, I was feeling like an imposter up until the day I quit my job. And the only reason I finally took the leap was because my mental health had disintegrated so much and my workplace felt so toxic, and they were doing layoffs, and this was the second job that I'd been at where they'd been having layoffs. And so I realized, like, I cannot F around anymore. I have got to take this step. Like, the situation has become too painful, so I'm going to ignore the voices in my head and just go out there and do this and put myself out there. Another example is when someone is like really broke or in a bad financial situation. We see people like this all the time who are able to do really incredible things and put themselves out there in ways they weren't able to previously because they just had no other option, right? So I would encourage you not to wait until that moment happens for you, but right now, find a way to combine acceptance and a compelling vision for your future to motivate you and fuel you to take action, even as you hear that little voice inside that is saying you're not good enough. Choose to believe that it's not true and you can do this and you can take action. The only thing that will help resolve your imposter syndrome and give you more confidence is taking action. It's actually when you take that first step that you'll feel the imposter syndrome melt away, right? Think about how long you've been dreaming about becoming a freelancer, or how long you've been dreaming about that thing you really, really want to do. And every day you don't do it, you actually tell yourself and you show yourself and you show your mind that you are an imposter. But once you start taking action and you start taking steps, you show yourself that you are capable. You show yourself that you're not an imposter. You show yourself that you can do this. So it's very crucial to remember that action will create confidence. Action is the only thing that can move you past the imposter syndrome. Which brings me perfectly to the third step, which is just taking small steps is a great way to overcome your imposter syndrome. It doesn't have to be all at once that you massively raise your prices. It can be a step-by-step process where, let's say you have a client who you charge $100 per an article right now, and you know this is way too little for your skills and your talent and your, what you believe you're worth. But leaping all the way up to $500 or $1,000 per an article feels really terrifying. Okay, well, how about it be okay that you just tell the next client that you're going to charge $150 for an article? Over time, when you take these small steps, your confidence will build up and you will be able to go from 500 to 1,000 or whatever else. So if you're really struggling with imposter syndrome and you're feeling a lot of anxiety about something and a lot of worry, and it feels like it's just impossible to take action, think about what is the smallest step you can take today? What is the smallest action that you can take? And remember, it needs to actually be an action that takes you further. So don't just go create another fancy website or portfolio or update your LinkedIn bio. Go and take a small step like connecting with a dream client on LinkedIn, or like telling your friend that you're finally going to start freelancing, or sending an email to someone that might have a job for you, right? So these are really small steps that you can take that bit by bit will give you more and more confidence until you can fully own your power and own your experience and own your worth as a freelancer. What if you could trade your frustrating boss, daily commute, and disappointing paycheck for more money, more time, and total control over your life? Well, I'm here to tell you it's possible, and it's easier than you think. On June 22nd, I'm pulling the curtain back on my 6-figure freelance business. I'm going to tell you everything, how I went from getting my very first client to quitting my job within 6 months, and today, after 1 year full-time in business, earning 6 figures in revenue. So if you're ready to step into your passion, quit your 9-to-5, and finally launch your freelance business and work with your dream clients, then you're going to want to join the waitlist for Freelance Unlocked. Go to HaleyGDavidson.com/freelanceunlocked to join the waitlist and be the first to be notified when registration opens. Step 4 is getting into a community. I think that community is the number one thing that at the start of my journey just transformed the way that I was able to show up, the prices that I was able to charge, the way I was able to talk to clients and go after clients. Your community is everything. It's who's going to pick you up when you do fall and when someone does reject you or say no to your proposal. And it's also who's going to remind you of what you're worth. I remember one time I posted in this Facebook group I'm in for entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs, and I shared, what do you guys think of this offer? It was something like, combining 10 blog posts into a single offer, and I was going to charge like $5,000 or something. And literally 3 or 4 people who knew me and had talked to me one-on-one and knew what my normal prices were immediately wrote in and commented and said, like, don't you dare make that offer. Like, that is so beneath your worth. Like, you typically charge this for a blog post, so it's not worth your time to do this. Like, this is your reminder. You are worth way more than this, and you charging these prices is, you really diminishing your worth and having that imposter syndrome and acting into it. So that was a really powerful experience for me and a really powerful reminder at a moment when I was struggling with imposter syndrome. Business had been slow, and I started wondering, am I overcharging? Am I really not worth these prices I've been charging for months? And when you think about that, that's kind of crazy, right? Like, people aren't going to pay you unless they think that they're getting that amount of value from your services. But it happens to all of us sometimes. We doubt, even if we have years of experience and, a long list of clients and a long list of results backing us. It still happens sometimes, and that's why community is so important. Your community can also help you navigate pricing issues. That's why I think it's so important, as just a reminder and a side note, to not view other freelancers as your competition. Having a community of freelance writers, if you're a freelance writer, is absolutely essential and crucial, because these are the people who understand the industry and the name of the game, and they're the people who you can ask, like, hey, what are you charging for this? Do you think I should be charging more? And they might be able to tell you, you should be charging way more. So very important not to view people in your industry and your community as competition. They're actually one of your most valuable resources of information and support. All right, so moving on through, as I give you the recipe to bust through your imposter syndrome, step number 5 is the hard truth that a really important step to overcoming imposter syndrome is just doing your own internal work. And this is where things like meditation and therapy really come in handy. I mean, I told you and I admitted at the beginning of this episode that, like, my therapist reminds me all the time that I'm selling myself short and that I'm talking down to myself and I'm not recognizing my successes or my celebrations. And the reason why it's so important for me personally to have a therapist do that versus like a trusted friend is because then we can also talk about why I'm doing that and what's coming up for me. Like, what in my childhood or what in the way that I'm processing a situation is causing me to lean into this imposter syndrome. So doing your own internal work, whether it's with a therapist or a mentor or a coach or just with your journal at home, is very, very important. And I know it can be really hard to make time for that, but trust me, if you can strengthen your own belief in yourself and the way that you look at yourself basically and how you value yourself and see your own worth, that will change absolutely everything. I don't think I would have been nearly as successful with freelancing in the past year as I have been if I hadn't kind of spent multiple years in therapy, digging this stuff up, uncovering my patterns, really getting real with myself, I guess, around how I view myself and how I do sell myself short sometimes. All right, so the last step here is really just giving it some time. When we combine action and time, anything can happen, including busting through and getting rid of your imposter syndrome. In a sense, I mean, I'm only a couple years into my journey and I still have imposter syndrome, so I don't know if it will ever go away, but I know that it does get quieter and I do get more confident as time goes on. So there are your 6 steps for getting rid of imposter syndrome as a freelancer. It's acceptance, having a compelling reason, taking small steps, leaning into your community, doing the internal work, and just giving it time. But before we wrap this episode up, I do want to talk about a really important concept here, and that's the idea that imposter syndrome can actually be a really good thing and a really good sign. And why is that, you might be wondering? Because trust me, I know that imposter syndrome does not feel good. Basically, this comes back to the concept that if you're uncomfortable and you're afraid, it means you're doing something right. Most people spend their entire lives just trying to avoid any sense of discomfort. But if you are currently feeling like an imposter, I believe, and I've seen in my own life, that it actually means you're on the edge of something big. You're getting close to the thing that you've been meant to do. You're finally overcoming, you're close to overcoming your imposter syndrome. You're getting close to overcoming the fears that have held you back and kept you stuck in a certain place. You wouldn't feel like an imposter if you weren't trying something new, right? Like, there's something to be said for the fact that, of course, you don't feel like an imposter in your daily life as much because you're used to it. You're doing the things that you've always done. But if you want a different life and you want different results and you want to be a different, stronger, more confident version of yourself, that means that imposter syndrome is just part of the journey. And so if you can reframe it, I guess this goes back to acceptance in a way. If you can reframe it as a good thing and as a positive signal that you're on the right path, then I think you will have a lot better of a time dealing with imposter syndrome and, have a better chance at overcoming it. As a reminder, we did talk about this topic a little bit last week and the myths about freelancing. There's a section all about the myth that you're not experienced enough, so please make sure to check that out. We also talked about mindset quite a bit in the Freelancing 101 event that I held a few weeks ago. You can still access the recording there. The link will be in the show notes here. So please make sure to sign up for that so you can access the full recording and the Freelancing 101 resources. I just added an ebook all about copywriting, freelance copywriting specifically. So you'll be sure to want to see that. And thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to listen and showing your support on this journey. I would love it if you would follow and subscribe to the podcast. If you would give a positive review, I would be super grateful. Have a great rest of your week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.